Welcome to the Battle Buddy Podcast with Keith McKeever.
Welcome back to another episode of the Battle Buddy Podcast. I am joined by Stephanie Lincoln today, and if you are interested in health and fitness and mental health and combining of all of that, which it's all combined one way or another, I've got the guest for you today. She's not only a personal trainer and nutrition coach, but you're also a licensed clinical social worker. It almost seems like a mouthful to say. But Stephanie, welcome to the show.
Hey, Keith. Thanks so much. And I love the name of your podcast because we have a Battle Buddy program within Fire Team Whiskey. So it's right up our alley.
Absolutely. You know what? I've said many times that we can't rely on the civilian population to take care of us completely. We have to be able to take care of each other. We have to be there for each other. We were there for each other when we served. We have to be there for each other now. You know, and that's how we can all work together to try to better everybody's lives. So,
yeah, absolutely. And I was just telling you before we started recording, I just came from my Women Army Corps group. So that's exactly what we do as a group. Is, you know, we take care of each other, especially female veterans, because we tend to kind of get forgotten about, you know. And we actually had 3 World War II seriously riveters in our group. They've since passed over the last couple of years, but Rosie riveters who served, right? And we had 3 of them in our group, right?
Yeah.
And it's about, you know, just supporting each other and taking care of our own. You know, it's not only that just camaraderie and that you know, that similar experience. Obviously, my time in the Army was much different than, you know, our Rosies. But, you know, we still owe them a debt, you know, that you know, they answer the call of duty and serve their country proudly. And they deserve, you know, the respect and dignity and support that, you know, until the day they die.
Absolutely. And you have a good point on the female veterans. You know, it's what did I see? The percentage was expected to go up to like 18 to 20% of the force within like 2030 or something like that. I think right now it's hovering around 15%, give or take. You know, so it's hard for me to imagine that because I was Air Force and we had women in security forces. So, you know, it seemed like it was more than that, but you know, the Army's different. The Marine Corps is different. You know, you got different, like vastly different population of women in each branch, but overall, I think it's about 15%. So y'all definitely need to stick together. You know, there's unique challenges, I'm sure, to being a female vet, you know, versus a male vet. So that's it's good that you got a little network and a little community. That's important.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about yourself before we dive into Fire Team Whiskey. What was your military story? What got you going? What did you do, et cetera?
So I rose my right hand at the age of 17. I was the typical story of basically if I wanted to do something with my life, I had to join the military. That was, you know, my parents didn't have a lot of money. My dad actually was a Marine and a Navy veteran. You know, he was enlisted, but, you know, he had 4 kids and a family to feed. And it's not like there was college funds there. So, you know, I graduated high school 17. I rose my right hand and joined the Army. And I actually went into finance because my uncle happened to be in the unit as well. So I just basically joined the same unit. And I had never even considered joining the military up until my senior year of high school. And it just was presented as an option to go ahead and pay for college if I wanted to do that. And I did want to do that because I actually would be the very first person in my family to get a higher education. So, you know, I come from an educated background, you know, kind of poor family. My mother's family was poor. So I wanted to kind of be the one to do something with my life. And so I joined the Army. I was financed. I was enlisted. And then for 4 years, and then I was number 1 to get promoted to E5. I went to PLDC at the time. That's what they called it. And I sat there and got passed over for promotion because this was pre 9/11. This was the old Army. And we had kind of, sat on our laurels for a while. And a lot of these E5s were just sitting in these slots, taking up these slots. So those of us who were kind of up and coming, and I, had won like Soldier of the Cycle and boot camp. And I was like the regional Soldier of the Cycle. And I was on the color guard and the honor guard. And I was kind of doing like the above and beyond kind of stuff. And I was kind of tapped to, as a future leader. And I wanted to be an NCO because my father was an NCO, and I got passed over. And I'll never forget the conversation that I had. We had one female in leadership in my unit at the time, and she was a major. She was, I think she was an XO. And we were going out to the range or something. And she kind of pulled me aside and she said, "I want you to be my driver." I was like, "Oh, okay, yes, ma'am." And got in the Hummer with her, and drove her out to the range. And she kind of took me aside and used that time to kind of mentor me and say, "Hey, look, you have a lot of potential, and you just got passed over because these dirt bags are sitting in these E5 slots. And, I think you could do something. I think you could be an officer." And I'd never even considered that at the time. And she kind of talked me into it. She said, "You're getting an education. You're going to have the college credits. Why not? Why not, go to OCS and be a leader. You'll still be a leader, just, in a different way." And so I came from that range experience and approached my platoon sergeant and said, "Hey, sorry about that, but I'm out. I'm applying to OCS." And he was a little disappointed, but he said, "I totally understand. There's nothing I can do. My hands are tied. I can't, get rid of these E5s taking up these slots. I'm sad to see you go, but I think you'll do great." So he supported that. I went to OCS, and then I branch signal, not because I wanted to branch signal. Again, I think my military career, half of the time it happened by accident, like things like that. I didn't really have these plans or ideas. They just kind of fell in my lap. And branch signal because one of my TAC officers at OCS was taking command at a unit around the same time I was graduating OCS, and he said, "I want you to be one of my platoon leaders." And I was like, "Okay." And I'm like, what unit is this? What am I doing? He's like, "Signal, just branch signal." So that's what I did. So branch signal. And I was a platoon leader. Actually was XO. I was rated as an XO as well at that unit. And then I caught a call from the OCS program, and they said, "Hey, we're in dire need of TAC officers. We need female instructors. We have none, and we think you would be a strong one for us. You did well in OCS. We remember you. You're a performer, and you've got great ratings. So we want to invite you back and send you to Army Instructor School and get you qualified, and then come on and be a TAC officer at OCS." So I did that too. And that's how I finished up my career, 10 years.
Awesome. And I would imagine with your, being a mental health professional and a fitness and nutrition coach, I would imagine you could probably trace some of those, the roots of that back to being an instructor and going through that training.
Yeah, absolutely. It helped a lot. But I was also very young, so remember, I was my right hand at 17. So I had a lot of learning to do, but, I think it was because of my father, and he was an NCO, and my first platoon sergeant, at whom I'm very close with to this day, and I call him my Army daddy, basically. Like, he had me at 17. He kind of took the baton at that time and grew me up, so to speak, and, guided me in the right direction, gave me great advice. And he very much is like a father figure to me. And so much so that he actually walked me down the aisle 2 years ago because my father had passed, and he stood in for my father and walked me down the aisle. Yeah. So we're that close. He is like a father to me. I just saw him last weekend as well. So, I think it was that installation of just, respecting that, not just respecting your elders, but, that kind of experience and authority. Even though I outranked my own platoon sergeant at that point, we actually ended up back in a unit together, the signal unit. He came in as first sergeant at a different company, but we were in the same battalion. and I outranked him. So we ended up, serving together again. And, but I always came in as, respecting the experience of the person. I was just a junior lieutenant coming in. Yeah, sure. I outranked 90% of the people in that unit, but that didn't mean shit. That didn't mean I knew anything. So I kind of glued myself to, those NCOs that I felt like who were outstanding, or the senior officers, and like learned from them, and always was open to, correction and, guidance and even criticism to, to kind of meld me into the leader that I, fortunately got a lot of good experience with.
Yeah, you have a good point. You don't know anything as a lieutenant. I mean, as an enlisted guy, did my whole time as enlisted, but that the joke always, about the lieutenants don't know anything. The lieutenants can't find their way out of a out of a
Right.
square room with a map, But I mean, there's something to that. You're younger. Sometimes, like I know in the Air Force, we had new officers that would come in, and they would put them right on flight with us, and they're standing in there. We know our job. We're qualified on our job, and here they've got a weapon, and now they're the flight commander, and they're ultimately in charge, but they've gone through no formal training yet.
Mm-hmm.
They would put them there for a month or two, and then boom, now they're off to school. They come back. When they come back to the unit, they weren't even, they'd go to supply or do something else. But
Yeah,
it was like they never had a clue what's going on.
yeah, and basically, I mean, 99% of my time that I spent as a a junior lieutenant and then a lieutenant and in the signal battalion, I basically was just like getting a task from command and then turning to an NCO or whoever was in charge of that and going, okay, how do you want to do this? All right, sounds good. That's a plan. Let's do it. Execute. I mean, I was just like a middleman, I was like, I felt a little bit useless, but, I learned, and I would sit down and, go into the mobile signal units that we had, and with our technician guys who were super smart. And I'd say, hey, kind of show me what you do. And I'd spend hours in there. And it's like, I kind of looked like I had nothing to do. I really didn't. It was just like they were doing their job. So, it makes my life easy. So I was just there to learn from them.
Yeah. You kind of hit on something there, not really having much to do, just kind of floating around. You'll probably appreciate this. At my second duty station, we had a lieutenant come back, and they put him in a back office job. And I worked day shift, and I came out of the law enforcement desk, and I was walking past his office to go to our operations officer's office to deliver something to him. And as I walked past, this young 22, 23-year-old lieutenant is sitting there with a romance novel with his feet kicked up on the desk with nothing to do. I had to stop and do a double take, and I'm like, am I really seeing this right now? Of all the things you're reading, you could be reading about your job.
Right.
You could be studying something. You could be just, shadowing a senior NCO around the unit or something. But you're sitting there reading a romance novel.
Yikes.
I was like, I can't believe what I'm seeing right now.
Right.
Like,
yeah. No, you'd never catch me doing that. No, for sure. And that, again, that was also instilled in me from my father. Like, you always had to be gainfully employed. Like, there was no such thing in my household growing up as boredom, quote unquote. Like, if the B word was worse than the F word in my house. Like, God forbid you said you were bored. Oh, that was it. You could not be caught in my household sitting around like shooting the shit or like doing something non-productive, because boy, I mean, mom and dad would have 19 tasks for you right away. Like, oh, okay, you look like you need something to do. I got something for you.
Yeah, you always find something.
Right.
Yeah, and that, you had such a unique experience though too, growing up in a military household, and then your uncle was serving, and then you went in and enlisted. Went through that process. That's seeing things from multiple angles. I mean, there's those officers that are probably enlisted or Mustangs or whatever. I know they kind of call it that in the Navy, but those officers were always the best to serve with, in my opinion. I
agree.
Shout out to he was Lieutenant Force at that time. He was our operations officer. That was one badass dude who went to bat for his troops on multiple occasions and had respect from everybody.
Yeah.
And then I hate to say it, but, the ones that come right out of the academy or right out of college and have no connections, it's just as much of a culture shock to them as is the young E1s and E2s.
Yeah.
They're still trying to navigate everything and figure everything out. So,
Oh, I
you know,
100% agree. I mean, from even when I went to OBC, we were all mixed in. That it was the active duty, it was the college graduates, OCS graduates. We were all kind of meshed in together, and it was like even the direct commissions, and it was just such a stark difference between the three groups, and quality. Just coming in with just a completely different attitude of, instead of, "Ooh, I'm here, I'm the boss," or "I'm educated, so you have to respect me." It was the Mustangs who were just like, "Hey, I'm here to learn," like bottom line is, sure. Yeah. Like I have the authority and the command, but I'm also here to learn, and I'm also here to support and take care of my troops. That's why I became an officer, because that's the bottom line, right? I mean, it's taking care of troops. So yeah.
And you need good leaders at all levels. So that's for sure. So tell us a little bit about Fireteam Whiskey.
Yeah, so Fireteam Whiskey, again, kind of happened by accident, like everything else in my life. After I got out of the military, I feel like I never left, because about a year and a half later, I was doing some private practice work, doing mental health stuff. I had some contracts, and I was doing just fine. And I got a call from a former battalion commander and a company commander. They both were on the line at the same time. Then conference called me, and they're like, "Hey, we have this brand new contract. It's, they're throwing a crap load of money at this military suicide problem. And we have this open position. It's brand new. It's been funded. We've got to hire for it. We want to hire you because you have worn the uniform. You're a mental health. It's a licensed mental health practitioner. And basically you're going to come on and you're going to have a caseload of 14,000 service members, Army and Air. This was for the National Guard in Florida. And we're going to basically hand over our behavioral health problems and say, fix it, with this one position. And you're going to take it over and tell us what to do and how to fix this problem. And so that was pretty cool. I mean, it was a huge honor to get that call. And they were very adamant about having somebody who not only had the expertise, but, had worn the uniform and wasn't just coming in as some, highly educated person saying, okay, I'm going to fix your suicide problem, military, and had never served a day in their life. So I came in.
The culture component of that, without that, nothing to work.
Huge. I mean, what a learning curve.
That would be insane
for people coming in to figure that out. I mean, I was way ahead of the curve. I mean, because they hired, for all these positions in all these states, and we all kind of came together with this, training, and man, it was so obvious. Like those of us who were hired, and there was a handful of us. We were way above and beyond as far as like experience and understanding what the problem is. And because we had served. So I did that for a while. I got promoted very quickly. I ended up as a deputy director for the Air National Guard program, running the multi-million-dollar program. We had like 258 clinicians spread out throughout the continental and overseas with our territories. So, and then just like any government job, eventually it came to an end. They converted all the positions to technicians. And because I was in leadership, took the axe, because their uniforms then come in as leadership. So I kind of had a little bit of an existential crisis at that time. I was like, okay, well, I've been doing this for the last like 8 years of my life. Now what? And so I just kind of was doing private practice, but I've always been into fitness. I was always like the fitness instructor, or the designated fitness officer. I was the body fat control officer in all my units. I was a competitive racer. I was on the Army National Guard endurance racing team. I did 300-mile races. So I was very into fitness. I got my certification. Just for fun. Like I got my personal training certification for fun because I started teaching at the Armory, like after I was done with my like 12 to 14 hour days, doing behavioral health stuff. I would, hold classes in the drill hall floor, doing like insanity, class, like and soldiers would come, after their shifts, and we'd work out. So, I had, done that work, and, with my experience on the medical side of things, being at these medical events and, going through all these records with these soldiers, and I'd sit down with like, probably like 50 soldiers in a day at these medical events and looking through all the records. And I was doing the behavioral health stuff, but like, man, these guys like are 20 years old on blood pressure medication, cholesterol, and they're 60 pounds overweight, and they've got all these aches and pains, and they're on trazodone, and they're on, Zoloft, and they're on Prozac. And it's like, what's happening here? And I saw the shift from, I joined in 1997. And then, so I was working on that contract and, doing those medical events in, 2010, let's say, 2005 to 10. It was a completely different picture than what I remembered in the early days of when I was in the military. There was just a different look. There were more, I never remember almost anyone in my unit being overweight. It was a very rare thing. And then when I looked around in the drill hall floor, it looked like half the people were overweight. And I just saw this trend, and I felt like something was missing, and what really drove me insane was at these medical events, they, the family support people would come, and they would sell like honey buns and Cokes and, like cookies and baked goods and chips and stuff all day to raise money. And I was like, but we're at a medical event. These kids are getting their teeth pulled over here because they didn't get their cavities filled, and they're deploying in 2 weeks. So it's like, I felt like I was going insane. I felt like it was so obvious to me, but nobody else was picking up on it. So I mentioned this issue to my husband, and he said, well, why don't you just do that? And I said, what? Why don't you just do that? He said, why don't you just do that whole thing, like the fitness and the nutrition and the mental health and all the things, just combine it into one. And I was like, you know what? That's a freaking great idea. I mean, that's what it should be. I mean, you can't just do one and not the other. Obviously, this isn't working because we have so many people who can't deploy because of all these issues with, their pains, and they're overweight, and they can't pass their PT test, and they're on all these medications, and they have all these unexplained chronic illnesses, and they're 24 years old. Like if that's your outlook on life, it's not looking good. So I created Fire Team Whiskey, and I created it as kind of a holistic solution to help veterans and military members approach health and nutrition and fitness in the most logical and most researched and up-to-date way possible. So I keep up with the latest research in nutrition. I go to all the conferences. I just attended a nutritional psychiatry conference last weekend. I'm very much into the fact that even a small minor vitamin deficiency can actually mimic a mental health disease, and you can have those symptoms, and you could just be deficient in a single vitamin, and that can make all the difference in the world. And this is not even being talked about in our modern medical society. And these are just simple changes you can make before you start all the invasive processes and the medications that have all these side effects, and also, make you feel like there's no hope. Like there's no way your body's ever going to get better, and that you're just going to continue to have to be medicated and more medicated and more medicated, and things are just going to continue to spiral for the rest of your life. Veterans deserve better. And so I created a way to show them that way.
Awesome. Yeah, I just had this, picture in my head as you were saying that. It's then I am not an automotive kind of person, but it just kind of makes me think of a car. If you're not moving the car at all kinds of things are going to go wrong. Might not start. But the nutrition aspect of it is the fuel that you put in it. If you put leaded gasoline in a race car, it's not going to run optimally. If you put race fuel in a Prius, I don't know what that would do, but I'm sure it's going to be too high octane or something. It's like you gotta optimize everything, and I think what you're referring to is biohacking. Is that right?
Yeah, and that's a term that's become popularized, in the latest few years by Ben Greenfield and Dave Asprey. But really, it's looking at an alternative approach that, and these aren't new concepts, by the way. I mean, it sounds high tech and new age and woo woo, but it really isn't. This stuff our ancestors have been using these techniques for thousands of years. It's part of why our we're still around as a human species. But it's looked at now as like woo woo, or that doesn't make any sense. What are you talking about? Wim Hof breathing? Like, why would you just breathe? Like, okay, well, guess what? That actually works for us. There's a reason why we do it.
Yeah.
So maybe it might work for you, so it seems like kind of new agey, but these are techniques that are backed by science and research. And, there's data. I mean, for some of these techniques that have been out there for even, for maybe hundreds of years, they've been using low carb approaches to cure chronic diseases since the 1800s. So this has been around for a long time, and there's plenty of data out there leading up to this day and age that supports that. But, it's looked at as alternative or weird or, non-conventional. We've been doing this. This is already established science. So if it's been working for that long, why wouldn't we try it now?
Absolutely. I mean, look at certain civilizations around the world have certain things that they do, and tribes in the Amazonian rainforest, they're still there. They're still living and thriving with no modern medicine.
Yeah, and perfect teeth. They don't have dentists. They don't have doctors. They don't have blood pressure medications. And by God, they're actually perfectly normal. I wonder why.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's definitely a lot of factors into it, but I think that there's a lot of things that people can learn from some of that stuff. Is even water. Just take hydrating. I mean, it's beat into our heads when you serve is hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. You walk around with a freaking canteen anyway, or a Camelback, and you just hydrate everywhere you go. Why? Because it's good for you. What do we do on the outside? Not drink water.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's just one of those.
Or our version of hydration is like a 20-ounce energy drink, right? Every 2 hours and a pot of coffee.
I'm still guilty on the coffee thing, but I stopped drinking energy drinks about 9 years ago because I realized I don't even know how to pronounce half the ingredients in it. So felt like that was probably a sign in and of itself. If I don't know what these are, like, probably shouldn't be putting them in my body. But the crashes off of those, the acid, the different reports that were kind of coming out, and I was like, this isn't good for me to be drinking 1 or 2 of these a day.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I haven't had anything like that in 9 years, and it's I just drink coffee and water, and like Zevia drinks. It's kind of a soda, but it's clear, it's more healthy, naturally sweetened kind of thing. Like I drink things like that, not an endorsement. Maybe I should say that.
This podcast is brought to you by.
This is my first endorsement deal. Imagine that. No, just kidding.
No, I mean, I like rolling in the dough on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. But like when I have a regular soda now, it's just like, oh wow, it's just way too sweet. Way too acidic. So you can do little. I guess I've been doing some little biohacks in some way of like just trying to wean myself off of certain things. It's easy to do. There's alternatives out there.
Right. Well, and that's what and I always like joke about this. Like what I do is not complicated. It's not rocket science. Like it really isn't. It's not, people pay me an immense amount of money to work with them one-on-one. And I'm like, I really there's nothing special really about what I do. I basically am stating the obvious, but it's that, I guess it's that accountability component, or the component of just pure, like, I'm just overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. I just need a plan. Like you give me a roadmap, I'm going to follow it. So that's what I do. I just lay out a roadmap. Here's what works. Here's what the research says. Here's the shortest way from point A to point B. Now, if you're okay with doing this zigzag process and going here and there and everywhere and trying every diet and every kind of fitness program and, kind of bouncing back and putting the weight back on and falling off the wagon, great. Then that works for you. If you want the shortest path from point A to point B, I can show you how to do it. It's going to be some hard work. You're going to have to follow it. It's not a short-term thing. This isn't a 30 days, 30 pounds in 30 days promise. No. And I always tell people, and people do sign up sometimes thinking it's going to be some sort of quick fix. And I've rejected people. I'm like, I'll give you your money back. That's not what we do here. Because I'm not interested in setting you up for failure.
There's not much in this world that's a quick fix. It takes, somebody framed it for me once. It's a lifestyle change. Mm-hmm. You have to make changes literally for the rest of your life. Like the energy drinks. I just said, you know what? I'm not doing that anymore. I don't want to have my heart explode, in my mid 30s, or whatever those could possibly do. But just little changes, like cut back on soda, go to these more natural things, drink coffee, water. I try to avoid juices, as much as possible.
Right.
Adding more green vegetables to my diet's been difficult. I will admit. I told a nutritionalist once, I said, you keep telling me what I need to eat. I already know what I need to eat. I'm just trying to find better ways to make it taste good without ruining the health benefits. Like, I was like, can you show me any tips on cooking, green beans or broccoli and make it taste good, but, without, killing a diet? Because it is about little changes.
It is. And, but here's the thing. It's, everyone knows what to do. It's how to do it. Right. And that's why what we do works so well, is because pretty much every fitness program or gym you join or diet you sign up for is completely leaving out a huge component of what's necessary for change. And that's changing what's going on from the neck up, right? You're so worried about what's going on from the neck down and losing the weight and getting fit and getting biceps and being sexy or whatever. But if you're not willing to change from the neck up, none of those changes from the neck down are going to stick. So, and that's the hardest part. And, it really does come down to that mental health, behavioral health component is, and I put it to my clients this way is, if you are not willing to make a change to, ensure that you have the longest life possible and the best quality life possible, then you obviously don't love yourself enough to do it. And that's hard to hear. And you can kind of laugh it off and go, no, I'm just lazy, or I just don't want to change, or I just like my bread, or I just like my Coke, or I just like my beer. No, that's not what it's about. That's surface level stuff. Deep down inside, you believe you do not deserve a healthy, long life, free of suffering, free of medical conditions, free of medications, that you can one day, walk your daughter down the aisle who's 3 years old right now and not be worried, hey, I may not be there because I already have high blood pressure and high cholesterol and I'm 60 pounds overweight and I'm huffing and puffing just walking around the house. And that's the hard shit, like to confront that, to look in the mirror and go, I'm getting in my own way. And confronting that, David Goggins is an amazing author. If you haven't read his book, Can't Hurt Me, boy,
got it on my Audible list. I haven't listened to it yet.
Oh yeah, and the audiobook's
on my
even
list,
better. Yeah, listen to the audiobook because you get a lot of extra stuff on top of
that's good
what's
to know.
in the book. Yeah, boy, I tell you what, when I get in a little slump or I'm feeling a little sorry for myself or feeling a little not motivated, just turn that on, boy. I mean, he lights a fire under your ass because that's the thing he goes for. He goes for your throat. He's like, look in the mirror. You're the one getting in your way. Tell yourself, I'm not willing to do this. Because you're the only one to blame. You can point the finger all the way around you, 360. That's never going to change your situation until you point it at yourself.
Darn good point. I know in a lot of ways I'm guilty of that too. I
We all
gotta,
are.
I don't do everything I need to do. I've made incremental changes, but there's that next level you got to ratchet it up to and dive deeper and do the next thing. So
Yeah. And, and that's the thing is that's why, our program works so well, because it's a battle buddy program, right? That's what we do. That's why it's called Fire Team Whiskey. It's a fire team, so if you've been in the military, you know what that is. It's the group of 4 or 5 or 6 people who are experts in their certain areas, right? And we all are in this to accomplish our mission together. We're surrounding you with the support, with the education, with the resources. We are going to move to the finish line with you. We're not going to leave you behind. If you stumble, we're going to stop. We're going to pick you up. We're going to figure it out. And then we're going to move on. No matter how slow it takes, we're going to get there. So you just have to be willing to take the steps, right? And we don't ask for a huge commitment, like you change your life overnight, because we know that doesn't stick either.
no, definitely not.
Right. And we're going to kind of take the baby steps every day, but we're going to keep you moving. And unfortunately, that's the hardest part for people is you might make a few changes and you start feeling a little bit better, but then there's kind of that line in the sand, right? It's like, well, now I know I have to do this and I don't know if I'm really willing to do it, So it's like, ooh, pump the brakes here. Oh, I made changes. I feel good about it. Let's just leave it at that, And so we kind of check the box, right? I made changes to be healthier, but we know that there's much more to do. But because we have that immediate satisfaction, and we're like, okay, I checked the box. That's good to go. We don't move past that point. So I think that's what we do with Fire Team Whiskey. Is sure, we'll get you started, but we're going to introduce you to some concepts that'll take you leaps and bounds further in your journey than you could ever think was possible, just because we're just introducing you to these concepts that get you faster progress, right? And that's what we all want, right? And it's not this, magical pill concept or a shot, in the ass every 2 weeks, and I'm going to magically lose this weight. Well, what happens when I stop taking the shots? Well, nobody asked that question. But
so they have, when everybody stops doing the diet, they make
right, exactly.
Make changes for 6 weeks, they lose 10, 15 pounds, and then next thing you know, they've gained 20, 25 back.
Exactly. And here's the thing though, it's like you also have to, there's this thing that we live in called a human body, right? And nobody knows anything about their own body, right? You have to learn about your body first and the way it works. We just assume like, oh, well, I heard that you just cut your calories and you lose weight. Well, what if that stops working? Okay, now what? Now you know nothing about your body. You don't even know why you lose weight because you reduced your calories. What's happening biologically in your body that makes that work? Oh, 99% of people have no idea. So that's what we do with Fire Team Whiskey is you actually learn about your own human biology and you learn how to hack it basically and work with it, because most of the diet plans and fitness plans out there are working against your body's natural systems. It's setting you up for failure. It may work short term, but in the long term, it'll stop working. And then because you learn nothing, you have nowhere to go. And you're just going to sit there and go, well, I'm not getting results anymore. And I don't know why. And then we get into this weird, like crazy spiral called insanity, because that's the definition, right? We do the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. I'm sure we all can raise our hand and say we've done that.
Yeah,
right?
We've all done that for something. Yeah, for sure.
Right. So it gets you out of that loop, right? You're done with that because you will always have a new like technique you can use to get you past that plateau. It's all about amping up your game, going to the next level, understanding your biology enough to try different things. And that's what I tell all my clients when they start working with me. I was just meeting with a client yesterday and we were talking about the same exact thing. I said, this is awesome because we've been working together for like 5 months now. And I'm like, okay, we've tried all these different tools. We've tried probably 10 things, right? Well, 5 of them have worked. Great. Imagine you have a toolbox next to you. We've got 5 tools in there to work that we know works for you and your body. So we can rotate through those. Every time you hit a plateau, boom, Okay, I'm going to take this tool. I'm going to put it back in my toolbox. I've got another one in there. I know it's proven. It works for me. Boom, I'm going to start implementing this, doing this for 30 days. And then I'll start making progress again. And it's always natural techniques, things that you can do anywhere, anytime, no matter what circumstance. So it's not a magic pill. It's not a shot. It's not some crazy extreme thing.
Some
It's
weird
just,
concoction that you got to put
right.
together, like mix this, and this together, drink it 3 times a day, and
Exactly.
then boom, it
Like,
just melts away.
go out and, do 3 backflips under a full moon, like, like whatever. Like, it's natural stuff that our ancestors have been doing for thousands of years that helped them be healthy. And they never had a pill or a dentist or a doctor, and they survived just fine. So you can too. It's just, you have to understand your biology and how to use these techniques to make your biology work for you.
Yeah, it'd be really cool to know, because I know I've had those situations where I hit a plateau. I lost about 15 to 18 pounds about 2 years ago, and I've been at the point where I've maintained it. But I know that I just got to take that next step and push a little harder, do certain things. But that's tough to hit that plateau, and sometimes it's just easy to hit it and be like, okay, well, I feel better. That next step, like, I probably need to eat more vegetables. My wife's been trying to get me to go basically vegetarian, and I'm like, I like meat too much. That's a hard one. There's just certain things that they're just going to be harder to do, but
I
you
would
may
like
have
it to make it very, very clear that Fire Team Whiskey is not a vegetarian or a vegan program. We do have one vegetarian plan, and I will work with you if you are that. But actually, we are very animal based, and again, all the research supports the consumption of animal based products. So again, we're biohacking. That's what our ancestors did. It works for us. The research is there. It shows that it works for you. Then that's what we do.
Yeah, if you think back about thousands of years, right, to Neanderthals and those ancestors, getting meat would have been difficult. It would have required teamwork and a lot of physical endurance, and they wouldn't have had meat every day. If you watch Animal Planet, you'll find that, like, I think when I hear a cheetah will be successful getting a gazelle once every 20 chases or something like that. Even the fastest animal in the world, who's a natural born hunter, cannot always get meat every day.
Right.
So our ancestors weren't doing it. They were eating berries, fruits,
whatever they can find.
Yeah.
Whatever was in season, whatever they could find. Sometimes they didn't eat for days at a time. Have you ever gone a day in your life without eating?
No, I don't think I have.
Most Americans haven't, right? Again, that's another biohack. Fasting. Oh, that's woo-woo. That's weird. No, it's not. That's how we're still here as human beings. You think that our ancestors that just could roll out to the Dunkin' Donuts when they were hungry? They went through long periods of time without food. Why? Our biology is built to support that. We have this amazing source of food that we carry around with us 24/7. It's called body fat. That's why it's there. So you have to learn how to get your body to tap into that. There's specific ways to do that. Fasting is one of them. And that's a technique we introduce our fire team members to, usually after about 30 days on our nutrition coaching programs.
Yeah, because there's more than enough stuff out there that's going to help you go the wrong way on the body fat. I mean, so much of the fast food and everything is all about convenience these days. We talked about energy drinks, but there's so much other stuff out there that's just straight up garbage.
Well, even the time, how long you eat. So there's research done out there. This is established that a majority of Americans eat 18 hours a day. 18 hours a day. So the minute they wake up, they put something in their mouth that it has calories in it. And from the time they go to sleep, they put something in their mouth that has calories in it. And sometimes even in the middle of the night, they have to put something in their mouth with calories in it. If we even just, there's a research out there that just says if you just shortened your window to 8 hours, you should lose about 20 to 30% of your body
So
weight.
8 hours between the first meal and the last meal.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 18 hours. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because if you think about it, that makes sense, because a majority of Americans are consuming caloric, calories in their drinks. So, they may wake up and have coffee with a bunch of sugary creamer and sugar in it. And then, they're drinking sodas and sweet teas all day, energy drinks. And then all the way up until maybe bedtime, they've got a drink beside their like their bed. Maybe it's a sweet tea, maybe it's a soda. It's endless, so you're constantly triggering that insulin release, that all the inflammatory systems that happen when you have a higher blood sugar response. Your digestion is constantly going; it never gets a break. So that causes some issues with the gut. And everybody's hearing about how important gut health is. This is just fairly new science. We're basically discovering that the gut is basically just as important as the brain. It's your second brain. That's being it's being called your second brain. And if you're not dealing with your gut health issues, then nothing else is going to improve your health. So it starts in the gut. So if you're doing things that are harming your gut, to include eating anything with like chemicals in it, that if you, like you said, if you turn over and you look at the ingredients and there are things that you have no idea what they are, that means they're not food. That means your human biology was not designed to digest that. So guess what's happening in the gut when your body attempts to digest it? Not good things. And that's the thing. It's like there's always that kind of level of denial. I mean, we're very good at that. Freud was very happy to discuss this issue. And, there's a lot of that not in my backyard thing. Well, it won't happen to me. I can drink energy drinks and they don't affect me. It's like, who are you? Why do you think you're special? Like, this is just because you say it out loud, or you wish it, or you believe it's not going to happen, doesn't make it true. You have the same biology as I do. We all do. So you're just going to magically think these chemicals aren't doing any kind of harm to your body. Denial is not, it's not a river in Egypt, right?
Yeah.
It's happening right now in your mind. It's not going to keep you from getting sick. It's not going to keep you from having chronic health conditions. And, it's not about the food you eat. It's about how the food was created. Is it really food? Does your body even recognize it as food? And 74% of what's in the grocery stores, the answer is no.
That doesn't surprise me at all. It's all the chemicals and everything that are sprayed on our food, and the way things are manufactured, and the additives to make things sweeter or make them more colorful, things like that. We definitely live in a different world these days than if you think about even our grandparents' generation, the World War II generation and before. They didn't have technology. They had to work with their hands all day. They were more physically active. They didn't eat in excess. They didn't have all the McDonald's and all the fast food joints, and they had to prepare everything by hand.
Right.
It was
and the food they ate came locally, right? It was, even if they had a grocer, it was the stuff in there was from local farms and produce places, right? I mean, your food didn't travel that far to get to you. It was fairly fresh. Nowadays, you go into a grocery store, that banana right there probably flew 2,000 miles to be on that shelf, So it's like, at that point, is it really food?
That's why some of them are probably living into their, well past 100. It's crazy to think about that. The life expectancy is like 78 or something like that. And then you see people of that generation living to 100. I've got a friend that's 97.
Yeah.
Still drive, like he can still drive. He's still like, it's incredible.
Yeah. And that's what the science, the last, I think 2 years in a row, for the first time in like 100 years, I think it is, our average life expectancy has gone down. So we're actually going in reverse now. So we are not living longer anymore. Each year now we are living less longer. And I believe if we weren't so technologically advanced as far as like our medications, I think You know, you have to look at quality of life too. So, you know, you encounter some people. I do a lot of like volunteer work with our Women's Army Corps, with these older veterans, and it's like the quality of life, like they're basically walking corpses. It's like they are not vibrant, and they're in pain, and they're suffering, and they're highly medicated, or they have dementia. The rise of dementia and Alzheimer's is directly correlated with our type 2 diabetes rates, which have skyrocketed. And what are all those linked to? Commercial industrialization of our foods. When we created grocery stores and packaged foods, you'll see the direct correlation of all these chronic health issues that rarely ever happened before. Heart attacks, cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes. It was so rare. And then you just see this skyrocketing of these conditions going along with our commercial industrialization of food products. And I say food products because they're not really food. You can't call them food. It's a food product.
That's definitely a good way of looking at it. I mean, it's easy to think about it as food, but yeah, when an overwhelming majority of that item is made in a laboratory or manufactured in some way, shape, or form, it's not really food. I mean, you grow a garden and you pull some lettuce from that, you throw it on a plate. That's food. You can straight from the garden, you know where it's at. But there's a lot of junk out there. Walk through any grocery store, it amazes me. There's and I'm still guilty of it. We all are. You pick up something and it's crap, and you still eat it.
Right. And that comes down to, again, it's that mindset shift, right? So, there's this kind of question of convenience, with that always comes up, in coaching and nutrition coaching, fitness coaching. It's, how can we make this as convenient as possible and, integrate this into your life? And that's always like priority one for me working with clients. Is I'm not going to give you a plan that's completely unsustainable for, your lifestyle. I do have certain clients who eat some processed foods, as minimally, but sometimes they do. And it's a compromise to, otherwise they wouldn't be making any effort at all. So I'd rather have you make some effort and start making some progress and feeling better. And maybe that will be reinforcement enough to, slowly start phasing some of these things out of your life. And, hopefully that's what it is. If not, then I'd rather you just do that than nothing at all. Right.
Yeah. I would say something's better than nothing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But I also always want you to be looking towards making progress. So it's a long-term focus instead of just like a short-term, I want to lose this amount of weight and then be done with this. I don't work with clients like that because that's just silly. I mean, that's unsustainable. There's plenty of people out there who will take your money and be glad to do that with you, right? Like, I'm not interested. Like, they can do that with somebody else. So, if you're willing to kind of start being open-minded and just adding some things over time and making slight changes. And then eventually when you look back, 5-10 years later, you're like, wow, like, my nutrition and my lifestyle look completely different than they did 10 years ago. And it was just that slow, sustainable movement towards optimal health. But you also have to understand and internalize that this is also what you deserve. You deserve optimal health. Nobody deserves to be medicated and chronically ill and miserable for the rest of their life and have that to look forward to, right?
Yeah, that quality of life is huge. Like you mentioned with the elderly people, and I've always said, whenever I leave this earth, I want it to be as pain-free as possible, but I want it to happen before I lose all quality of life. I do not want to sit in a nursing home, urinating all over yourself and having somebody spoon feed you.
Yeah, but here's the deal. What's the difference between being a 20, so I'll use myself as an example, a 28-year-old woman who was on 7 different medications and in and out of the doctor's office and chronically ill and always in pain and always having a headache and having blood sugar swings all over the place to the point where she can't even drive anymore, and having like every doctor's visit being more and more frustrating because it's just, well, let's try this medication. Oh, that one's not working. Well, let's try this. 24 years old, and it becomes normal, right? And I think that's the danger in this, is because our society at large is so chronically ill, it's normal. 74% of Americans are either obese or overweight. That's normal. I'm abnormal. I'm weird. I'm weird as fuck because I'm in great shape. I'm 42 years old and on no medications. I have body fat under 20%. I have no mental health issues. I have no chronic health issues. I'm perfectly healthy. I'm weird. I'm abnormal. So if
Good
you look
point.
at
That's-
it,
yeah.
I mean, the
That's a
norm
rarity.
is sick. The norm is medicated. The norm is overweight. So now we're looking at kind of a cultural shift that we're encountering in our society. And this is kind of what inspired Fire Team Whiskey, because I saw the cultural shift in the military. It was like, this is the normal now. You know, being a 22-year-old soldier on, you know, all these medications and with all these aches and pains and complaints and getting your teeth pulled because you have so many cavities, that's normal. I object to that shit. Like, I highly object to that. And if that doesn't make you furious, I don't know what else will, because that infuriates me to believe that I accepted that for myself for so long and that other veterans are doing the very same thing right now. That lights a fire under me. That pisses me off. It pisses me off that 2 out of 4 veterans who go get care at the VA are type 2 diabetics. That is a completely preventable disease. It should not exist. It shouldn't exist. We can cure it tomorrow.
Yeah, but the
it's
VA
normal.
just want to hand out pills, you know, and just stop. Here's your pills. Take it. We'll reassess in 6 months.
And, you
Do
know,
X,
and
Y,
I don't
and Z,
want
but
to,
as
I
they're
don't want to
talking about-
vilify, you know, I don't, as much as, you know, they're doing the wrong thing. And I'm a licensed medical provider. I'm a licensed mental health counselor. I have a state medical license. And when we sign up for that and we do our boards and all that stuff, our very first, you know, ethics thing that we go through and check the box and say, I agree to this, is do no harm. And that's the number one question we should be asking ourselves. And I'm challenging you, licensed medical providers out there. Are you doing harm? The answer is yes.
That's a good point.
Our medical system is doing harm. And
you think
why?
sometimes-
Because it's our standard of care, because we don't know what to do, because we can't force people to change their behavior. So it's easier for us to just give you a pill. And that's what happens. You know, you come in, okay, you have type 2 diabetes. We've talked to you about your weight. We've talked to you about your nutrition. You've done nothing about it. Now you're a full-blown type 2 diabetic. We're not going to trust you to change your behavior. Here's your pill. Here's your injections. You know, so there's kind of that apathy and frustration that happens in these medical fields. And it's gotten, you know, so bad because of the, you know, the healthcare systems and the insurance, and, you know, you can only spend 5 minutes with your doctor, and, you know, they're not going to sit there and give you advice about your lifestyle. And, you know, 9 times out of 10, your doctor themselves are suffering from some chronic health condition, you know?
Yeah,
So
good
it's
point.
like,
Definitely.
we're all sick, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, I just challenge you to decide that I am choosing to exit this system. The system is the way it is. This is a moving train. We are not stopping it. It's going to go right off that cliff. And it's going to take as many people with it as possible. I'm jumping off the damn train. It's going to hurt. It's going to suck. But you know what? I'd rather do that and do the hard work and get on this path myself and fix myself than to stay on this train that I know is going to be plummeting off this cliff. Because that's just the way we're doing it. This is just the way we do it. No, I reject that.
You would think that the VA would go back to the, put some pressure on the Department of Defense and say, look, we're seeing all these issues coming out of service. What are you doing to make sure that these troops are taken care of while in service? Physically, mentally, make sure that there's, probably one of the worst things that ever happened was putting Burger King and fast food joints on military bases.
You think?
I knew a guy once that would go to Burger King twice a day on shift. And it's just like, I have no idea where the guy's at these days. But the good news is there's a way out. Like you said, might be painful for a little while, but you guys have the app, and I know you've got, correct me if I'm wrong, another 4 or 5 trainers with you.
Yeah, 5 trainers.
Okay.
5 or 6 maybe. And we all kind of specialize in different things. I'm obviously kind of the more mental health, nutrition aspect. I have more like kind of law enforcement type fitness trainers. I've got a guy who's still in the Army, who's a master fitness trainer in the Army. He's more kind of sports and kind of bodybuilding and stuff. So yeah, we have people who have lots of different specialties, but what everybody signs up for, no matter who you are with Fireteam Whiskey, is you have to be open to, learning about your biology and, trying these, maybe things that you think might be woo woo, but guess what? They're backed by science and they work, and they've worked for hundreds of thousands of people all over the world, if not millions. And they work for our members. So, you're going to get a systemic approach that's research-based, that is going to walk you step by step to making small incremental changes, changing your behavior, changing and implementing a plan that works for your lifestyle, right? So we're not going to give you something you can't implement and it's just impossible.
Yeah, because I'm not doing a 300-mile endurance race.
Right.
That's not going to happen.
We meet you where you're at, and we go from there. So, it may look a little hardcore because we are military, centered, obviously, but it's more focused on that kind of camaraderie, and we all have this kind of shared background and experiences, and it's kind of that style, obviously, but and that accountability. That's where you hired me to do this. I'm holding you accountable. We're not, I'm not gonna go, oh, okay, well,
that's okay. You can do it next week.
I say, you need to get back on plan. This is what you agreed to. This is what you're paying me to do. That's it. That's the bottom line. So, if you no longer agree to that, it's that growing pains. You need to get out of your own way. You need to look in the mirror.
Absolutely. So for the listeners out there who don't see it, I do have it scrolling across the bottom, fireteamwhiskey.com. I'll have it in the show notes. I'll have the link to the app and everything in there too, so people can find it nice and easy. But what kind of things, other than the accountability and some of those things, what are some of the stuff people would actually see in the app that they can kind of interact with, and some of the things they can do?
Yeah, our app is really awesome. First of all, we have literally thousands of exercise videos, workout plans, workout systems, every kind of, if you only have this specific amount of equipment, you can search for type of equipment. So maybe you want to work with the TRX, you just type in the search TRX, all of our suspension system training comes up. We have hundreds of recipes. We have hundreds of what's called Warrior Wellness and Warrior Fuel videos. So we actually have our own cooking videos. We have our own recipes as well. We have, I think, up to 15 different kind of packaged eating plans where you can kind of DIY it. Or if you do our Battle Buddy program, then you work one-on-one with a coach, and we put you on a customized nutrition plan. So that's macros, all that kind of stuff. We give you specific eating plans, and then also customize your fitness program. So we kind of have a DIY program, and then we have a Battle Buddy one-on-one program. So we also have a really cool group in there. So it's kind of a message texting kind of, interactive group. So we're posting our Flex Friday pictures, or, our post-workout selfies, or maybe, celebrating small scale victories. We're encouraging each other. And then we have really fun about monthly, we have challenges for prizes. Oh, and where else are you earning rewards for the amount of workouts you do? So we have an earning program. So if you do like 50 workouts, then you get a Fireteam Whiskey water bottle. If you do 100, you get that, you know, so as you go along, you get rewarded for your hard work. And then we have fun challenges. We'll do, you know, specific like 7-day suspension fitness challenge, or we'll do one of our programs like Coach Tommy, you know, for like 14 days, or we just got done with we had a Fireteam Whiskey book club where we read the book Eat Smarter by Sean Stevenson, which is an excellent book. And so we went, you know, read a chapter each week, and we discussed it on the chat area, and, you know, everybody kind of learned a lot, and then we kind of expounded upon that and helped people implement these specific things they were learning about in the book in their lives. And what else we got? Oh, you can track your progress. You take your progress pictures. You can put your measurements and your body weight in there, and you can text a trainer anytime, you know, so we monitor our texts. So you can text if you have a question at like 7:00 at night, like, hey, I'm not really sure how to do this exercise, or what about this food? And you take a picture, send it to one of our trainers, and we'll answer you back.
That sounds interesting. Text a picture. What about this food? I'm sure you see all kinds of things on there.
Yeah. So
Like,
most of the time,
what did you cook?
Most of the time the answer is, do you really want to know what I think? Or do you already know the answer to that question?
If you're asking, yeah, you probably already know the answer to that.
If there's a question about it, you probably shouldn't be eating it.
There should be that filter.
Nobody's ever said that about kale.
I can't think of many reasons why to eat kale.
Neither can I.
It tastes terrible.
I hate it.
Oh, it's gross. It's one of those green things, right? You got to just
one of those green
try
things,
and find a way to make it taste good. So there you have it, folks. Fireteamwhiskey.com. Once again, scroll at the bottom. All the links will be in there. So go check it out. Go follow them. If you need that extra push, there is a resource for you. So Stephanie, I appreciate you coming on the show and telling us about Fireteam Whiskey and a lot of other stuff about nutrition and mindset and all that stuff. So I appreciate you being on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Keith.